This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, Christopher Mitchell, 212th Trooper, Silas 1610, Carmen CJ, Rune Scribble, and Legendary Ray Ray, and brought to you by 212th Trooper who requested this topic. If there is a video you want me to make, just head over to Patreon or become a channel member and select the Pickled Producer tier, since among other benefits, you will get to make a video request every month, be it the continuation of an existing series or a brand new story. Also, while I have you, please consider liking the video and subscribing, since it costs you nothing and really helps the channel to grow. But with that said, let's get on with the story. What if Superman, the poster child of DC Comics, was in Marvel? And not just Marvel, but the MCU. With James Gunn's upcoming Superman movie, that's something I've been thinking about, such as where to put him, what his impact would be, and how do I keep him from just nullifying all the threats and creating a boring timeline without stakes. After much thought, I think I have some ideas, though before I get into the actual narrative, I figure I might as well get some of the out-of-universe stuff out of the way. First off, this thought experiment is predicated upon the assumption that Superman has either always been a Marvel character, or for some reason Marvel bought the film rights to him. Either way, it doesn't really affect things since he'll be treated as a character native to the MCU. Secondly, this means he's bound by the rules of the MCU and how they use their characters, which means he's generally going to be kept to movies he's starring in and big team-ups, so don't expect him to drop in on Spider-Man willy-nilly or go about stopping every villain with his insane powers. And finally, he needs an actor to play him. While normally I'm not a big proponent of fan casting, here it is necessary, and while I could take the easy route and just say Christopher Reeves or Henry Cavill, I thought it best to look at who Marvel would realistically cast. Due to envisioning him as a Phase 1 character, this meant an actor who was active in the late 2000s but wasn't a big name since the MCU wasn't exactly a super prestigious gig back then. To this end, I decided to go with David Giantoli, best known for playing the lead in the TV series Grimm, though at the time his biggest role would have been his episode of Grey's Anatomy. I believe David has the range to exude that small-town boy charm, while also being able to lock in and show a more serious heroic side when needed, making him a good fit for both Clark and Superman. A belief I am not alone in, as he was in the running for the role in Man of Steel, only losing out to Henry Cavill, and later going on to play an adult version of John Kent. But you're not here to listen to me waffle on about David Giantoli. You're here to listen to me waffle on about Superman in the MCU. So let's start at the beginning, which ironically happens to be the end of 2008's The Incredible Hulk. In place of the Tony Stark post-credit sequence that gets retconned in Iron Man 2, we instead see a young man in a college dorm room reading about the recent Hulk incident on his laptop. As he does this, he is interrupted by his roommate who calls him Clark and asks if he wants to join him at a party. Good-naturedly, Clark replies maybe later, since he needs to finish up this assignment for his journalism class. Though, when his roommate leaves, he quickly switches tabs to a design program, where the audience are given a brief look at a very familiar shield. This would then lead into a self-titled Superman movie which would release somewhere between 2009 and 2011, in which Clark begins his journey as Superman, while also juggling his final year of college and his internship at the Daily Planet. As part of this, he would have his own cast of characters, such as roommate Jimmy Olsen, boss Perry White, and close friend Lana Lang. In this universe, Clark would be aware of his powers and alien origin, but his parents' insistence had always kept it under wraps for his own safety. Though, in this new age of heroes brought about by Iron Man, Clark, or as he would dub himself, Superman, would be eager to help and protect people from the rising tide of villains. This would result in a learning curve as Clark must figure out how to regulate his abilities to avoid harming people unnecessarily, or causing massive property damage, since unlike Tony Stark, he doesn't have billions of dollars to fix his mistakes. Also, unlike Stark, he would attempt to maintain a secret identity, with this making things difficult, as he must constantly make excuses to go be Superman without his friends or colleagues noticing. This would put a lot of strain on his relationships and schoolwork, though it would be made even more tricky when his assignment for the Daily Planet has him shadowing and interviewing up-and-coming tech tycoon Lex Luthor, who seemingly overnight has made himself a competitor to Stark and Hammer Industries by doing what Stark refused to, and working closely with the government to create weapons for combating and containing metahumans. As is his way, Luthor would hold them all in contempt, though especially the young upstart Superman, expressing a desire to see that unregulated wannabe god brought down a peg. Eventually, however, this would grow into more than just a desire, as feeling the government aren't being as decisive as he would wish, and that he has a right to take matters into his own hands, Luthor uses his inventions to create a suit with which he intends to fight and kill Superman. Subsequently, the finale would be a battle between the pair in which Clark would defeat Luthor, though spare his life, showing his humanity, though Lex would not see it that way, and would swear vengeance as he is arrested. Ironically, this would also help Clark's Daily Planet piece, as with Luthor now big news, a deep dive into the man would sell like hotcakes, though just when it seems the young superhero has everything on lock, he would be approached by senior investigative reporter Lois Lane, who would tell him in no uncertain terms that she knows he's Superman. Thankfully, she's willing to keep his secret for as long as he keeps helping people, but should that ever stop, or should he become the sort of figure Luthor casts him as, she won't hesitate to expose him to the world. From here, the MCU would return to its canon course until the events of Avengers, at which point Nick Fury would certainly want to recruit Superman. Feeling it is his duty to help, especially after learning of another alien stealing the Tesseract, Clark would be an easy get, joining the rest of the team as they go after Loki in Germany. Here he would bond with Cap as the pair share similar values, with the younger hero having grown up on stories of Steve's heroics, while he in turn could be the old soldier's guide to the modern world, and a sign that in spite of everything that's changed, good people willing to stand up for what's right still exist. In contrast, he and Stark would not get on especially well, as Tony would see this early 20s farm boy as a naive hick with no concept of the realities of being a hero, while Clark would not appreciate Stark's arrogance and cynicism, as it reminds him a lot of Luthor. These tensions would only grow with the arrival of Thor and the news that S.H.I.E.L.D. plans to weaponize the Tesseract, causing Clark to question the morality of his involvement in this operation. Nonetheless, following the apparent death of Phil Coulson and the news of the Chitauri invasion of New York, Clark would join the others in rushing to defend the city. Here they would truly become a team, each putting their individual strengths to use and trusting their allies to do the same, which for Clark means taking to the sky and shooting down ships with his heat vision alongside Thor. Through this, the pair would develop a bantering, friendly rivalry as they compare how many Chitauri they can stop, though this would not be the Kryptonians' only job, as he'd also use his X-ray vision and flight to save any civilians trapped in tall buildings or under rubble. However, this would not be the only way in which Clark utilizes his flight capabilities, as when the nuke is launched at New York, it would be he rather than Tony who guides it up through the portal and towards the mothership. From here, things would return to their canon course, as Loki is arrested, the Tesseract is returned, and the Avengers get shawarma, though from that point on, the world would never be the same. This would become apparent in the next film, Superman: Illegal Alien. As following the Chitauri attack on Earth, Superman has become a divisive figure, with some hailing him as a hero for his work with the Avengers, while others see him as just another alien conqueror. As a result, Clark would find himself facing resistance to his hero work, as people actively condemn him, try to thwart him, and in one tragic case, choose death over being saved by an alien freak like him. While nothing these people do is a danger to him physically, it does cause Clark to question himself, along with how much good he's actually doing in his place in the world, since while he is aware that he isn't strictly speaking human, he has always seen himself as a person no different from any other at his core. This self-doubt would lead him to return home to Smallville, where he would attempt to reconnect with his roots and values by helping people on the small scale in ways not too dissimilar from the Superman grounded run of comics. However, while this is happening, criminals are attempting to profit from the new sense of unrest by acquiring alien tech to sell on the black market, with this leading them to target a government freighter transporting something that recently fell from space and crashed in the Arctic. Upon the completion of their heist, the crooks discover an object that doesn't look Chitauri, though when they activate it, they are instead confronted by a malevolent android who calls himself the Eradicator. But this is not all he does, as upon recognizing that they are A, not Kryptonian, and B, criminals, he promptly kills them all, demonstrating his extreme brand of justice, and his mission to instill Kryptonian greatness, as he calls it, on this planet. Subsequently, Eradicator begins a campaign of domination, forcing Clark to confront him head-on, only to learn that this machine has all his powers and none of his mercy, resulting in a rather bad beatdown for the Man of Steel when he refuses to take his place as a fellow Kryptonian conqueror. Following this, Clark is imprisoned in Eradicator's frozen fortress to await re-education, with him using this time to figure out how to defeat the merciless machine and save the world. Through some reflection on his recent activities, he realizes the answer is his humanity, and so after fighting his way out of the fortress, he confronts the Eradicator one last time, whereupon he promptly turns the tables on the robot and seemingly destroys him. This victory also helps to restore Superman's image somewhat in the eyes of humanity, though those who oppose him now have even more reason to do so, since his race created the machine that almost took over the world, proving what a threat he could be if he ever decided to turn against humanity. Nonetheless, Clark does not allow this to get him down as he previously did, instead resolving to keep helping people who need him in the hope that this will earn humanity's trust. And even if it doesn't, he's not a hero to make people love or worship him, he's a hero because it's the right thing to do. Meanwhile, in the post-credits scene, it is revealed that S.H.I.E.L.D. has recovered Eradicator's body, and is in the process of storing him away for study, with plans to let Stark and Banner have a look at him, as maybe he can be turned into a second government-controlled Superman, or possibly even a shield around the world. Following this, Clark does not return until Age of Ultron, in which he helps in the raid on the Hydra base to recover Loki's scepter. In doing so, the Avengers come across Wanda and Pietro, with Pietro having speed equivalent to Clark's much to his shock, and Wanda's magic showing itself to be his first proven weakness. Nonetheless, while the heroes lose the twins, they do gain the scepter, with Stark and Banner setting about building Ultron, though here they also have some Eradicator tech to use as a basis for their system, a fact they keep from Clark since they know how he'd get about that. Instead, the young Kryptonian joins the other Avengers for their party, having a few laughs and even almost lifting Mjolnir to everyone's shock. However, this is interrupted when Ultron makes his grand entrance and steals Loki's scepter as part of his plan to save the world by exterminating humanity. This puts the Avengers on high alert, as now they must stop a problem of their own making, with Clark predictably growing angry with Banner and Stark since they went behind his back and made another Eradicator, except this one wants to destroy humanity rather than subjugate it. Even still, the Man of Steel does help out in the fight with Ultron and the Maximoff twins, only to be once more felled by Wanda's magic, this time putting him in a trance to attack his allies, giving the other Avengers a much more difficult challenge than a rogue Hulk to deal with. As a result, the Hulk vs Hulkbuster fight is replaced with an Avengers vs Superman fight, in which they realize for the first time just how dangerous their friend could be. Thankfully, Thor and Cap together are able to snap Clark out of this state by reflecting his heat vision back at him with the shield and striking him with lightning, though even still he is racked with guilt at the thought that he could be turned against them so easily. As a result, he retreats into himself during their stay on Hawkeye's farm, and needs some help from Banner to get his head in the game for the mission to South Korea to stop Ultron from uploading himself into a synthetic body. Feeling a need to prove himself after his last failure, Clark takes point here, engaging Ultron directly alongside Cap and Natasha, with the trio discovering that he does indeed have Eradicator's powers. Recognizing what a threat he could be with his body, Steve tells Clark to destroy it, something he is willing to do, using his strength and heat vision to damage it beyond repair, though this does come at the cost of Ultron getting away with the two humans as hostages. Seeing this for the Pyrrhic victory it is, the Avengers along with the twins as their new allies retreat to Avengers Tower, where Stark proposes perhaps the most insane scheme yet, to reactivate Eradicator, and to combine him with Jarvis and the stone from Loki's scepter, as this should make him into an ally capable of overpowering Ultron and getting their friends back. Though Clark doesn't like this, he can see the logic, and so reluctantly agrees, with the result not being Vision, but instead the more heroic version of Eradicator seen in some iterations. Together, this group then set off for Sokovia, which Ultron has lifted into the sky with plans to drop and create an extinction-level event. However, here is where a notable change occurs, as Superman has been shown to lift things much heavier than a city in pretty much every incarnation, meaning when Ultron drops it, it falls to Clark to catch Sokovia, with the Man of Steel managing to safely lower it back to the ground and massively reduce civilian casualties. This does unfortunately mean he cannot be there to save Pietro, who tragically dies, though in return, Eradicator destroys Ultron, allowing peace to return to the world, with Banner and Thor leaving Earth, Clint and Stark retiring from the Avengers, and Cap, Natasha and Clark setting to work training their replacements in War Machine, Falcon, Eradicator and Wanda. During this time, Clark and Wanda also begin a relationship, since the Kansas farm boy is infinitely more charming than the hyperlogical robot, while her ability to counter him with magic makes him feel more human than he does with anyone he's ever met. Unfortunately, this pairing is not enough to prevent Captain America's Civil War, as while Sokovia was saved, Wanda's blunder during a training mission still brings about discussions of the Sokovia Accords. Like in canon, this divides the Avengers, with Clark sharing Steve's view that this is not why they signed up, and is an act of government overreach that would politicize and weaponize heroes, subsequently causing him, Wanda, Sam, and new additions Ant-Man and Bucky to break from the group. Like in the movie, the airport fight still takes place, with Clark having to face Eradicator, whose logic dictates that the will of the government is absolute, and thus they must obey and support the Accords. Thanks to the Mind Stone and upgrades from Tony, Clark is defeated and subsequently detained with the rest of Steve's team, though this is a short-lived imprisonment, as after a climactic battle with Stark in Siberia, Cap returns to free his allies as they go underground, forming their own Avengers who operate based on what is right rather than what is legal. Like in canon, the governments of the world would not allow such a group to operate freely, and so would send pursuers, though here there would be a much more concerted effort to recapture this team, as among their ranks is Superman, one of the most dangerous people on the planet. As a result, Eradicator would more than likely be put in charge of the team's capture, and due to his black and white thinking when it comes to good and evil, he would be completely ruthless in his pursuit of what he perceives as evil-doing traitors. And this is where the third and final Superman movie would begin, Unlike the others, I don't have a title for this one, so if you have any ideas, please put them in the comments below. Here Clark would recognize that his presence among the team is putting his friends' and innocent lives at risk, and so would negotiate his own surrender under the condition the others not be pursued this way. Deeming this acceptable, a deal would be struck, though the question of where to imprison Clark would quickly arise, as unlike Clint and Scott, they can't just put him under house arrest or even back in the raft, since his powers would allow him to easily escape if he wanted to. As it turns out, the answer would come from a most unlikely place, as in exchange for a full pardon, Lex Luthor claims to know a place that will neutralize Superman forever. Deeming the superpowered alien a greater threat than one bold businessman, his terms would be accepted, with him building something he calls Project 42. As it would turn out, this is a man-made portal of sorts, and upon its completion, Clark would find himself banished to the dreaded negative zone. At once, Luthor's reason for choosing this as his prison would become apparent, as due to the lack of a yellow sun, Clark's powers would quickly diminish, though this would not be the only issue, as the longer he stays there, the more the dimension plays with his mind, heightening his aggression and paranoia. As a result, the true stakes of this film would be for Clark to hold on to his principles and the good man he is while being powerless, both in the metahuman sense and as a stranger in a strange land who is constantly being pushed. Testing him in these regards would be none other than Annihilus, as seeing the Kryptonian's positive matter body as a way to safely exit the negative zone, the great insectoid tyrant would send his minions to capture him. Normally, this would be easy for Superman to deal with, though in his current state, he would learn what it is to be weak and helpless, likely being forced to run more than fight, and band together with other denizens of the negative zone to rise up against their cruel despot. You know, kinda like Quantumania if it didn't suck. Ultimately, however, Clark would discover that Annihilus's cosmic control rod can not only give him his powers back, but also open a portal back to his world, resulting in the final fight being between a repowered Superman and Annihilus for the rod and the fate of both worlds. Naturally, since this is a superhero movie, the superhero wins, and is offered the right to rule in his vanquished foe's place, though showing that he hasn't allowed the negative zone to change him, he instead returns to his own dimension, determined to find out what Luthor is scheming now that he's managed to send him away. However, to his surprise, when he returns, Luthor is gone, as is half of the population, with it being revealed that what were days in the pocket dimension have been years out in the real world. And so would begin Avengers Endgame, with Clark returning to the compound, where he would be horrified to learn that by doing what he thought was the right thing, he wasn't there when his friends needed him most against Thanos. Feeling deeply guilty for his absence, since he probably could have turned the tide of the battle against the Mad Titan, the Kryptonian hero vows to do whatever he can to fix things, with Banner briefing him on the upcoming time heist. Due to their friendship, he would be assigned to Thor's team alongside Rocket, with this giving the pair a chance to reconnect, with Clark being able to empathize with his feelings of failure more than anyone else on the team. While this would not heal Thor's trauma, it along with some time with his deceased mother would give the Asgardian the strength to find his way again after losing it for 5 painful years. Meanwhile, Clark would help Rocket to avoid capture or detection by flying him around, though the raccoon would refuse to be carried like some puppy or baby, and so would insist on riding on Supes' back with an overly large gun drawn. Nonetheless, this would be a success, with their team rendezvousing with the others back in the present mere seconds after leaving, now with a complete set of Infinity Stones. Due to the stones being magic, and thus deleterious to Clark as a Kryptonian, it would be agreed that Banner should be the one to make the initial snap to bring everyone back. Though there wouldn't be much time for celebrating, as at that point 2014 Thanos and his army would attack. Subsequently, Tony, Thor, and Steve would confront him, though in spite of being one of their strongest, Clark would not join them, at least not initially, and that is because his focus would be on rescuing his friends trapped inside. Due to his X-ray vision, he would be the best suited for this role, with his speed, strength, flight, heat vision, and freeze breath being enough to ensure that he can get everyone out much sooner than in canon, and subsequently into the fight. Likewise, Hero's presence would be invaluable, as he could either take down swaths of enemies from above, blast ships out of the air, dispatch Thanos' lieutenants with ease, or even go after the Mad Titan himself. However, regardless of his position on the field, one thing would remain the same. When Thanos takes the stones from Carol, he and Tony would have the same idea, and so would race to take them back and make the ultimate sacrifice. In a testament to his Kryptonian power, Clark would outpace the Iron Man suit and recover the Infinity Stones first. In spite of their rocky relationship in the past, Tony would make one last appeal for the younger man not to do this, as even his strength won't protect him from the kickback of the stones, though refusing to let anyone else pay for his inaction, and especially refusing to take Stark away from the family he'd fought so hard to protect. Clark would smile and tell his teammate not to look so sad, since he's just some naive hick, remember? Then with another word, he'd snap, erasing Thanos and his minions, before collapsing to the ground and dying as Earth's greatest hero, and the most human of all the Avengers. And that's where we'll leave this story. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.